All right. You are now Kerry, Kaleba, and Daisy Ahlstone. And I am going to just be here and okay, everyone is adequately hyped
Oh,
for bugs. I see it. All right. Are you ready for this?
we
So
see it.
so we're gonna let's hit it. Let's hit Brood X. Let's hit it,
All right,
people.
everybody.
Daisy and Carrie, just tell me when I gotta advance the slides, and you'll hear me laughing in the background. Is everybody
Okay,
ready?
All right.
Wait,
So
wait,
first
wait,
slide's
wait.
up.
ready.
Hold on, Mackenzie, are you still there too?
You can be off mute. Just don't turn your camera on because it'll
Yeah,
mess
you
up
can
our,
be
our
off
Okay,
mute.
picture.
cool. I'm trying to navigate it.
No,
Okay,
be off mute.
you're
Be
good.
off mute because I think
We can hear you laugh.
the people need to hear you
Okay.
and me laugh to this. You got it, Mackenzie?
Okay, cool.
All
Yeah,
right,
I'm good.
let's do it. Let's do it. All right, Carrie,
Okay,
Daisy,
All right.
Brood X, take it away.
Brood X Foodways. All right. First slide's up. Ready?
ready.
Okay. Of the cicada, there are two kinds. One, small in size, the first to come and the last to disappear. The other large, the singing one that comes last and first disappears. Both in the small and the large species, some are divided at the waist, to wit, the singing ones, and some are undivided, and these latter have no song. The large and singing cicada is by some designated the chirper, and the small cicada the tetagonium. And by the way, such of the Tatagonia as are divided at the waist can sing just a little. If you present your finger to a cicada and bend back the tip of it and extend it again, it will endure the presentation more quietly than if you were to keep your finger outstretched altogether, and it will set to climbing your finger, for the creature is so weak-sighted that it will take to climbing your finger as though that were a moving leaf. Next slide, please.
Brood-X is the largest of the 17-year periodical broods of cicadas. Cicadas are Hemiptera true insects. Brood-X is native to 3 areas along the East Coast, including Ohio and the DC. There are 3 other species of cicada in the area, and some emerge every few years. However, Brood X is the biggest brood. Millions of cicadas emerge every 17 years to scream, mate, and then die.
Cicadas are essentially harmless. They're non-toxic, they're non-stinging, they're large, kind of dopey, and they sing constantly and loudly. They cannot bite you. They do not have mouths in their final form with any capability of biting. They do have a proboscis for sucking juices from plants rather than any chompers, unlike the locust. The greatest risk to animals from a cicada is that they could eat too many cicadas. The greatest issue for humans is that they crunch. And they look weird. They are big and they crunch. You get the idea. Next slide, please.
Cicada nymphs go through 5 stages of development, instars, during 17 years underground. When they become adults, males come out first to begin mating. The females will then lay about 500 eggs each. They rise for about a month and then will die after mating. Eggs are laid in trees, and when they hatch about 6 weeks later after they're laid, tiny nymphs will drop to the ground. These small nymphs will then burrow into the ground and disappear for another 17 years. Periodical cicadas generally live underground for 17 years. However, there are much smaller numbers that come out after 13 years and some that come out after 21 years. These stragglers are the result of underground nymphs growing at different rates. And this periodical cycle of the cicada's life are naturally compared to other similar events that humans experience temporally, ecologically, or culturally. For example, many people have expressed concern or disdain for the cicada because of their similarities to the more destructive locust's life cycle, which is a major threat to food security because of the size and uncontrollable hunger of the locust never satiated, and leading to the depletion of large-scale agricultural cash crops. In 2020, of course this happened in 2020, a huge swarm of locusts, tens of billions, okay? Tens of billions of locusts, many locusts, hit the Horn of Africa and decimated crop yields and caused serious food security issues in the area. The biblical plague tie-in with locusts is almost too obvious to mention, but again, these are locusts and not our bumbly, sweet, dopey cicadas. Rituals and cycles are often studied by folklorists, and we've discussed them here on Folkwise Live. Next slide, please.
So, it would be easy for us to see a swarm of large bugs whose song is the loudest in the insect world, whose shells cover the trunks of trees, whose bodies litter the sidewalks, and just think plague. But cicadas, as we've said, are relatively harmless. They might be better understood or better recognized by us to be more like a fine wheel of Parmesan. The milk has been processed, pressed into a mold, and then set away to rest for, let's say, 36 months. Or, maybe closer to that 17-year cycle, a good bottle of scotch. The industry standard has a typical minimum of a 12-year aging process. I have had 3-year scotch, it's okay. But generally, we're going to be talking about a 12-year aging process, or a 15-year aging process, or maybe 35. Or maybe fermentation is where you want to go. So a traditional kimchi aged and processed, where the cabbage is slathered in its chili paste, left to ripen, and then buried in clay pots underground, where they are allowed to ripen. That root cellar, that underground process, buried where the pots are buried, regulates the temperature, keeps it nice and safe for that long-term storage process. Burying yourself in the ground for 17 years is a pretty good way to stay out of sight and out of mind until it is your turn. However, modernization, construction, the general shift in how the world works every 17 years makes it pretty difficult to stay hidden sometimes. And we have to rethink how we store ourselves and our food. Next slide, please.
Ha! Suckers! We tricked you. We're talking about food now. Okay, so here's the deal. Cicadas are edible. When Kerry was in high school during 2004 emergence, the going rate was $5 if a dare wasn't enough to eat a cicada. Many different animals benefit from the cycle of cicada emergence as a food resource, and when cicadas breed, die, and begin to decay, they feed the earth and fungus through that decomposition too. Cicadas can be eaten raw, fried, smoked, whatever you want. A cicada doesn't have a lot of nutritional content, but we sure do know a lot about the nutritional power of grasshoppers, crickets, termites, and more. Insects can go pound for protein with red meat. Think about that. Insects are plentiful and a largely sustainable food source. But people hate bugs, and they hate cicadas. More specifically, many people in the USA hate the idea of eating bugs like cicadas. Some of the negative associations with eating cicadas come from concerns about locusts, and all of these feelings might just get meshed together. We'll return to this idea at a later point. Next slide, please.
All right. Let's embrace the bug. So, all this fear and the edibility questions surrounding cicadas has led many individuals to express those anxieties through play. When I was in high school, we dared each other to eat cicadas. I didn't, I was busy. This wasn't uncommon. People play with their food all the time, especially when they want to play with dangerous, extreme, or taboo foods. Your memes, your bingo cards, your artwork. Post in the chat if you've seen any cicada lore across your social media feeds. It's everywhere right now, just like the cicadas. Curiously, the edibility or risk taken by people in the US, namely in the regions around Brood 10 or Brood X, that's roughly roughly 2 billion people on the planet already have insects as a regular part of their diet. Termites, crickets, all sorts of good things, grasshoppers. Um, there's a very good and very popular and very fancy restaurant in DC that is well known for its grasshopper tacos. Jose Andres loves to put them on the menu.
Mm.
Um, but also, business speculators are really looking towards insect based foods becoming an $8 billion industry by 2030. It's 2021 right now. We are 9 years away from an $8 billion insect based food industry.
Do the math,
Next,
people.
next slide. So, let's talk about some of those food futures and a little bit about colonialism.
Mm.
People have been turning cicadas and comparable insects into other types of consumable products, such as flour and seed, all along here. Cricket flour, for example, has a flavor profile that is described by those who've eaten it as a little bit nutty, but generally a neutral flour. It's got tons of protein packed in it, and generally you wouldn't know you were eating crickets. Cicadas are frequently compared to soft shell crabs in the eating. There's a nice hard outer shell, but a soft, squishy interior that you can pick out. Meanwhile, we've also got the fake meat industry. That has taken the world by storm. Every time we talk about impossible meats and these veggie burgers that appear on a fast food menu and every different type of alternate meat, that's great, that's cool, but the reality is we already have plentiful access to insects. We just have to get over ourselves and get over all the weirdness about eating them. There's just so many of them already. And speaking of eating them, on to our next slide.
So, something you've probably been seeing a lot of recently are cicada recipes. Here are some examples of recipes recently adapted for cicada consumption. We have the popcorn cicadas with a dipping sauce here. We have cicada cookies at the top here with little cicadas on top. Chocolate covered cicadas with gold leaf, no less. Wow! If you weren't already enticed, I don't know what else could do it. Cicadas on top of pizza as another top. Next slide, please. We even have roasted cicada tacos with a mole verde and lime. But these are all interesting because most of them involve cicadas as a topping on top of existing food rather than as a staple to the formation of the dish itself. I would argue that this is fairly common in the United States or as a Western approach to the consumption of brewed X, but that's not necessarily the same use of this particular consumable in many other cultures.
Knowing and learning how to eat insects, but particularly the cicada, it's also really important for understanding their use in food. Like with any food, there's a number of fungi and bacterial issues that can take advantage of these populations, and you had better, by golly, have that knowledge of a forager to understand what is okay and what is not okay to collect. In the image here on the right, you can see a picture of a cicada with the fungus Massospora cicadina. It's a white fungus that eats away at their innards and fully and completely, it is well described, leaves them as sex crazed zombies. It also has psychedelic properties, and every single entomologist will tell you to please do not eat the cicada butts.
Please do not. Please
Please don't
do
eat
not.
them. One of the side effects that the fungus has already eaten through the cicada is that the butt falls off. Please don't eat the cicadas who are
Please,
full of fungus. Eat them
please
otherwise.
be a good
Enjoy.
forager. Be a good forager and know your product. Next slide, please. Now, this is a slide in which we do have an embedded video, and I am sure hopeful that this will work. And if it doesn't, I will describe the
Me
video to
too.
you.
All right, do I press it?
I think you can press it, and it should come alive.
It's not huge.
Celebrate the brood egg
It's
cicada
small?
nymphs
Yep.
then with ramps, the all-time chef's favorite springtime ingredient. And we're gonna go ahead
small?
and blanch
fine.
and dry the cicada
hear it?
nymphs, and then add it to the rice wine vinegar,
Okay.
sugar, water,
cicadas have
pickling
moved,
solution,
from taboo and
this
Still going,
is
still going,
just going to
my
be
mistake, sorry.
amazing. Maybe you'll get an invite. What?
This
There
is
you go. There you go. Looks tasty.
It's cicadas and ramps. Okay, for
Yeah.
those in the know about ramps, and we just felt that this was such a perfect video to pair with this. And you'll see why in a moment. But cicadas have moved from a taboo and off-putting consumable to a playful and then exotic and rare But why does this happen? And what other foods does this exoticism happen to? What makes a cicada fit into this perfect combination of detested turned coveted? In a seamless transition to our next point, slide please. We return to this idea of colonialism as expressed through foodways. Is the cicada just a thinly veiled expression of ethnocentrism stemming from legacy colonialism? The fears of being around and consuming large amounts of insects and the transition to an exotic delicacy only fit for expensive fine dining restaurants is a question that we don't exactly have the answer to, but have a number of ideas. It's either the foragers who are taking advantage of the extra harvest, or the people who want to challenge their palate by taking a risk on an unusual food, who we see consuming these cicadas. This further alienates the eating practice of people where insects are regularly consumed and leads to stereotyping and the objectification of those individuals through citing foodways.
Importantly, these conversations about the edibility of insects happens with every emergence of every single brood. This is nothing new, and in fact, many people have been bringing up their past conversations and experiences that they had with the cicadas years ago, especially with this specific brood and their last emergence. Next slide, please.
We will now be taking your questions, but remember, just like the cicada, we're here for a good time and not a lot. Thank you all for turning into Foodways, Cicadas, and Colonialism lecture.
GG's in the chat, people. Oh my god. Hey, cast off the shell of your old self. Spend all summer on Twitch spamming ladders. That's what I gotta say. Wow, incredible. Incredible. I am weirdly...
I literally finished this slide 5 minutes.
Daisy,
like, before we started.
I am so hungry now.
I want to eat cicadas.
Oh my
Let's
god.
go.
I'm about to drink.
Quotes have had meaning on many levels. making quilts helped me to get a sense of my own space, sense of finding my way, sense of really working my way out of the labyrinth.